he put them together. Those are the only two people that are really actors, if we want to say that. That's it. The cameraman had big camera like this that he carried on his shoulder and took film all the way. When he finished a reel of film, you know, old film came on big reel, they sent it back to Paris for safekeeping. Wow. And so as they went along, they found a way to send back to Paris. When they came to the final part, the British said to him, listen, what are you doing? It's forbidden to take movies. He says, well, all right. There's nothing here, because he didn't have any film. The last film was inside. So he told them a story. He said, look, he says, I'll give it to you. I'll give you the film. They said, okay. He said, but let me do it in a dark room, someplace dark, because if I take it out here in the light and give it to you, you won't have anything. It'll be finished. So they said, yes, okay. So he went down below decks, on someplace new, took it out, took a different roll of film so he could finish, because the last part on the ship he wouldn't want to give them, so he gave them a fake roll, and he kept that roll with the pictures on it all. And that is how the whole thing got put together. But nobody understood what he did at first, because people thought, well, the Jews are going, you're going to get. But it wasn't just going. They had to go through Europe and the whole area and with the people. But he had that, and the woman, he married the woman. He actually married that woman.
That girl.
And
who said she was pregnant?
What?
The girl who said she was pregnant.
That was probably true.
Well,
but she wasn't pregnant.
No, she wasn't. No.
Okay.
She got pregnant later with. He married her. She wrote books also, and she wrote books, Barracks Girls, you know, all kinds of full of plenty of sex, and they made lots of money. He wrote very good books, like Hasidic tales. They didn't do so much money. He used to tell me, I mean, I knew him quite well. He says to me, she sits, there's noise, people talk, and she writes or types. He says, me, I sit in a closed room. He says, and I write. Her books sell like nothing, and mine, I gotta work. Even though 2 books of his have now come out. One is, if I could think about the 2 boys who were killed in Chicago. What's the name of the book?
The book was compulsion. It was about two
young Jewish boys.
Very
committed murder.
Committed the murder for the sake of proving the perfect crime.
Yeah, and that book is actually, I spoke to his son. His son lives in Jerusalem. He has a son and a professor of some kind. I don't know exactly. And I'll end up my connection with, I know Meyer, we knew him very well. He liked to eat Chana's food. So therefore he became a good friend of mine. But his last night of life, he was supposed to come to our home. There was the first conference of Holocaust survivors in Israel. And we had at our home, it was a Saturday morning, we had put together the survivors of Treblinka, who blew up the camp. We had them all, they were all coming. Why did I say we had them all? Because her cousin was one of 2 Czechs that were in this uprising. Otherwise, they were all Jews. Everybody was Jews, but these were Czechs that didn't know Yiddish. So they had nothing to do with anyone else. They knew Czech, they didn't know what but they were part, and they survived, and a few other people of the uprising survived. They survived, these 2, by running out, and in the daytime, going into the swamps, and at the nighttime walking, and they went back into Germany. And they didn't know Yiddish, so therefore they weren't really Jewish in the sense of Judah, but they knew German, because in Czechoslovakia they spoke German. So they went they went right into the Nazis' camp, and they said that we are Czech Germans, and we were bombed out. We were prisoners, but we were bombed out, and we want to go back to work. And the Germans put them back to work, and they survived.
Wow.
Those two guys, and amazing stories on. Meyer was supposed to come that Saturday morning to meet them all, because this was a whole different, something new. There were two non-Jewish Jews, I mean, two Czech, and he was going to come to meet them. He never showed up. He died that night. He died that night. And it was a terrible blow to us and everything else, but...
How long ago is that?
How old was he?
Long ago.
Excuse me, how long ago?
How long ago?
Oh, it was the first survivors conference. It must be 25 years ago, 25 years ago. I get it, 20 years ago. And...
so he was like 70 or something.
But he did these things. Whatever he did, people never understood. You got to understand, he became very infamous because of what's her name? What was the girl?
Arendt.
What?
The Arendt.
The girl that became very popular. The whole thing became popular with her. This girl from that didn't survive. Her parents survived. The father survived. Anna Frank.
Oh.
He became very notorious, Meyer. Why? The Anna Frank, he met Anna Frank's father. And he told Anna Frank's father that this is a wonderful Jewish story and it should be a play. And he helped them get the book written and published, but then he had the rights. He became for writing the play. Now he saw Anna Frank as a Jewish girl, not just a survivor. She's a Jewish girl surviving. And he wrote the play, and some so-called people who review plays were very non-Jewish. They were Jews but not Jewish in New York, and they told Anna Frank's father, no, that's not the way. It's got to be an international. She belongs to the world. And they talked him out of so they wouldn't use his play, but he had the contract. So lawsuits were going on, and it was terrible. Because he used to come and talk to me every day, and with this whole bit lawyers and everything. I even got Harold into the house one day.
He was 100% correct.
What? He lost in the end.
Yeah, but he was correct because the Dutch have used the Anne Frank story to excuse themselves for what they did.
That's right.
It's true.
That's right.
It's
and
terrible.
he did not want that to happen. He was absolutely
He knew.
he was Jewish,
I understand.
and he understood this. The Jews, and these people, the Goyim, are using it to justify themselves.
Exactly. That's what the Dutch have done.
And that's what's
They
happened.
like absolved themselves for the horrors that they made.
You're saying exactly what he said then, but he won the case. They paid him a big piece of money, but he couldn't. His play would not go on. They paid him, the people involved, and he took the money and he gave it away. He says, I wouldn't use that money for anything. And he was not a rich man. He never made a lot of money. He made okay, he did nicely, but and he gave the money away.
So he's a principle.
I mean, that a man of real principle. Meyer was impossible guy, but he'd like to come and eat and have the schmooze with us, and we always had a good time.
Murray, but you told me many years
I want to tell you something. He went up to Mount something or other in the desert here, and he comes back with a big piece of rock, and he says, Murray, we're going to make the 10 Commandments on this. I said, leave me alone. He went, we'll make the right. He got me into so much trouble. I'm in trouble. Financial. He came to me with paintings where you have to make copies of, but we couldn't say no. We had it, but it's because of him that Hannah, that's my wife, Hannah, started to write. They were all sitting at the Eichmann trial, and
Hannah was there?
Hannah was there every day. She never missed a session. Oh my God. And then she wrote something. And she said, Meyer, would you edit it? Unbeknown to her, he sent it to the New York newspaper, the whole thing, whole full page, and we got it. He says, you don't need editing. The people need to learn how to read, you know. It was just, and after that she kept writing and doing things. That was the beginning. That gave her the confidence that she had the ability to do something. It was very important. A very important thing that there. Look, he was a crazy man. We used to get letters, and he went to China. We get a big postcard. This is a wall. That hotel.
You like the wall?
This is a wall. No, it was wonderful. Anyway, now you can ask questions because these two young people, I met them. Where did I meet them? When the ship that I was one of the sailors on, they were on that ship. And that's a long time ago, it's 1947. Wow. And we're still around. There's not many around like us. And we met through the years, on and off through the years we met.
That's 69 years ago.
69, really?
And Reuven and Cheva met on the boat, and they fell in love on the boat.
Whoa!
And they have many family and grandchildren.
Got children and grandchildren here, just like all of us. So if you've got questions to ask on how legitimate the film is, you can just ask him.
You recognize the cabin in that exact cabin that they showed in the snow.
My hearing is not so well. So
The snowy cabin, the place where they stopped.
The snow?
Yeah.
The cabin.
Of course. It took all the night. We went in the morning. We left Germany, the French zone of Germany, by military trucks, and we were covered as goods, not as people. And we arrived through Austria to the foot of the Alps.
Who's that?
And we started crossing the Alps.
On foot, like in the
exactly as
film.
you have seen it. And in the morning we arrived to Italy, to the house, exactly this hut as we were there. There we spent the whole day, because the cover story was, if you are caught by Italy, there was a conflict between Italy and Yugoslavia about Trieste. That you are refugees from Trieste. And we spent the whole day. We didn't have bread, but we had chocolate with us, and not very kosher meat.
Yes.
And at the other night we went to Milan. In Milano, yes.
To Milan.
And from there to the ports, and you picked them up in Italy.
But
There wasn't a port where we picked them up.
all this story of the illegal, it took us from Poland to Tel Aviv, because we arrived to the port of Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
Haifa was still British. It took 3 years. 2 years the way, in 1 year, more years Cyprus. There we shared a tent.
Yeah.
You were 1 year in Cyprus.
Yes.
Yeah, we got out. No. They had Rachmanut, they had pity on the sailors. They took us out after a few months. We got out. That was
But so you said it took 2 years. Plus
2
another
years to
year.
get to Haifa,
And then back again.
and then they put him into Cyprus camp, like all of us. We all went to Cyprus. They stayed in Cyprus a year. until they can, because the British allowed out of Cyprus only a certain number every month.
So to get all those papers and to get all that, and then
Had nothing to do with papers. They didn't care, the British. Once they caught you, put you in Cyprus,
Yeah, but it took 2 years to get from
cross
there.
to get through Europe, yeah. Because nobody cared, nobody wanted them. The trucks that they drove in, those trucks, were all illegal. They were stolen or borrowed by the Haganah. That wasn't the Haganah, but it was a, what they
Jewish
call,
volunteers.
but you also got to understand, when the war was over, Eisenhower was not exactly a friend. He didn't see all of this, of what happened to the Jews. And during the war, what the hell's his name? Was pretty much of an anti-Semite, but a good fighter. Now what happened is that after the war, what do they call them in the army? Religious leaders in the army. What?
Chaplains.
Chaplains in the army, mostly Jews, but Goyim also, saw what happened. And some of them said, we got to do something. And they started to help get the Jews, and they met the Haganah, it was whatever they called them, I don't know, people, because there were Jews in the British Army, okay? In Palestine, there was a cry to get people into the army, okay? Jews in Palestine joined the British Army. Arabs did not, because Arabs were not Palestinians, okay? They said, we're not Palestinians. Jews joined the army to fight against the Nazis. It was only after 48 when suddenly they all became Palestinians, these people who were not Palestinians. The Arabs were never Palestinians until later when they lost the war. Now,
Syrians,
what?
Syrians, a lot of them, Syrians, Egyptians.
Yeah, they were all kinds of things. Now, the Jews joined the British forces, some 30,000 of them. And they fought in Italy mostly. And from those 30,000, a number of them, quite a few hundred, became what was known as the Bricha, the Haganah people in Europe. They stayed there and they helped organize and borrow the trucks and whatever had to be done. And that was the movement. The chaplains, both British and American, and also some Goyim, joined against the will of the American army and the British army to help them get trucks. They couldn't do much more. They helped them get trucks and helped them get food. And they had all kinds of reasons. They made Pesach for them, and they did all kinds of things like that. And it was but the American army and the generals were not exactly friendly to all of this. They was unimportant to them, you know. They fought a war, they won a war, the rest dropped dead. But the Jews were the ones who were suffering. And so the chaplains were very important to join with the Bricha people, with the Jews from the British Army who stayed. Now, I'll go one step further while I'm at it. In Cyprus, we were all in Cyprus in big camps. You lived in tents, terrible conditions. But some 2,000 children were born in Cyprus, believe it or not. There wasn't a hospital until a few months before they closed it all up. And there was a fellow by the name of, now I can't remember his name, unimportant, a Cypriot, who joined the British Army also. In Cyprus, they organized also for the war. So the Cypriots had an army, a British army. This particular guy, Vasily, well known, he was in Egypt. He met the Jews. He became very friendly with the Jews, and he became. War was over. He was sent back. He got to Cyprus, back home Cyprus, and he was the contact for the Jews and the British and helping get whatever they could sneak in to Cyprus, into a Jewish camp. I mean, they try to get things in for bombing. They try to get things in. And they help try and get more food. And in Cyprus, in the camps, 2,000 children were born. There wasn't a hospital until after 1,000 children were born. And some people remained in Cyprus until nearly a year after the state of Israel was declared, because the British said they wanted to be neutral and not join anyway, so they didn't want to empty Cyprus camps. So nearly a year's on. The last two ships that came to Cyprus were also run by Americans, and those two ships were in port. They didn't fight the British. They went straight to Cyprus. That was the agreement, because already things were happening in such a way. And the people all got off in Cyprus, all the people, and some crew members were allowed to stay on board. The British didn't want the crew members to stay, but the guy who was the captain, Ike Aronovich, he knew the rules of the road. What are the rules on a ship? Like law, it's the rules of the road. If the crew got off the ship was abandoned. Then the British owned it. And he knew that. He said, no, we have to stay. So they kept certain basic crews on each of these two ships. There were two ships on the other. And then he kept saying, we don't have fuel, it's cold. But he didn't use the fuel. He said, when they said, okay, you can go, he said, I don't need your fuel. And they left with the people. They emptied the camps with these two ferry vessels. So that sort of puts the whole story together.
אני מכינה קפה